Hello my friends, this is Jesse Bryant, and I just wanted to share with you a few kernels from a book I'm reading right now. It was given to me by my campaign advisor. I'm very grateful for it, in fact, and this is going to have to be the next book I read all the way through. I know I have a bad habit of trying to read several books at once, but I'm going to stick with this one. It's called The Man versus the State by Herbert Spencer. And I'm just going to read you a few things that I've picked up so far. In the first chapter, called The New Toryism, he starts off right in the first paragraph by saying, "Most of those who now pass as liberals are Tories of a new type. This is a paradox which I propose to justify. That I may justify it, I must first point out what the two political parties originally were, and I must then ask the reader to bear with me while I remind him of facts he is familiar with, that I may impress on him the intrinsic natures of Toryism and liberalism, properly so called." And I have to agree with him there. I'll just cut out here for a minute. Because, really, the comparison between Democrats and socialists has come about because their general attitude is that the government is the only authoritative power in society and that it has become some new icon or god of theirs that they have to worship and insist that all of us obey. So, what kind of mentality breeds this? Where exactly did they get this idea? This always baffles me, how people can insist that an institution has any kind of moral quality or authority to it. But I guess either by brainwashing or just by whatever trauma that happened when they were raised with. But I think we all recognize that the Democrats and the leftists in general are just not psychologically or mentally comparable to a typical conservative or just in general a libertarian or a true liberal, as we like to call ourselves. You see, Democrats will always be the ones to complain whenever there's a tax cut, claiming that it'll cause a deficit or that it will leave social liabilities unfunded. But most honest people never complain about a tax cut because our first instinct whenever we need something or want something is not to blame someone else for the fact that we don't have it already. It's to work harder and earn the money or the resources to acquire whatever it is we want. I think we're a little bit more realist in that sense. But moving on with Mr. Spencer here. And here he's speaking of the revolutionary periods in England itself. There was a time when Oliver Cromwell overthrew the monarchy and had the king publicly executed, and then for a short period he established a republic in England. It was ill-fated and short-lived, unfortunately, and England has never really been a proper republic since, to their great misfortune, I think. But moving on here, at the period of the Revolution, while the villages and smaller towns were monopolized by Tories, the larger cities, the manufacturing districts, and the ports of commerce formed the strongholds of the Whigs. And that, spite of exceptions, the like general relation still exists, needs no proving. Such were the natures of the two parties as indicated by their origins. Observe now how their natures were indicated by their early doctrines and deeds. Whiggism began with resistance to Charles II and his cabal in their efforts to re-establish unchecked monarchical power. The Whigs regarded the monarchy as a civil institution established by the nation for the benefit of all its members, while with the Tories, the monarch was the delegate of heaven, and these doctrines involved the beliefs, the one that subjection of citizen to ruler was conditional, and the other that it was unconditional. Describing Whig and Tory as conceived at the end of the 17th century, some 50 years before he wrote his dissertation on parties, Bolingbroke says, "The power and majesty of the people, and original contract, the authority and independency of parliaments, liberty, resistance, exclusion, abdication, deposition, these were ideas associated at that time to the idea of a Whig, and supposed by every Whig to be incommunicable and inconsistent with the idea of a Tory. Conversely, divine hereditary indefeasible right, lineal succession, passive obedience, prerogative non-resistance, slavery, nay, and sometimes popery too, were associated in many minds to the idea of a Tory, and deemed incommunicable, inconsistent, and in the same manner with the idea of a Whig." And that's from the work Dissertation on Parties by Mr. Bolingbroke. Continuing on with Mr. Spencer here. "And if we compare these descriptions, we see that in one party there was a desire to resist and decrease the coercive power of the ruler over the subject, and in the other party to maintain or increase his coercive power." And this harkens back to our current circumstances today, I think. You know, the Republicans are supposed to be the conservative party. They often fall short, and we have too many moderates in our ranks. But they're supposed to conserve the structure of society and the freedoms of our citizens. In other words, they're supposed to protect the Constitution and the Bill of Rights, and they're supposed to limit the power and the acquisition of power by the federal government and by the executive branch in particular. Meanwhile, the Democrats seem to be hell-bent on increasing the power of the executive until it becomes basically an elective dictatorship. Now, of course, we can argue with plenty of evidence that both parties have vastly increased the power of the executive branch over the past few decades, and I won't dispute that. But I would dispute the wholesomeness of those, quote, Republicans who held office in the past few decades. So, once again, I think there's a clash of ideology here. There's those of us who believe in free will, even if we don't happen to believe in our Creator. At least we're not superstitious enough to believe that the government can become our new God, or that we can appoint people with a mandate of heaven or with a divine right. At least we know better than to elevate others above us in the power structure in such a dangerous way.